My parents spent my wedding fund on my sister's divorce and demanded I postpone the wedding, but the surprise I gave them threw their lives into chaos. 6 months ago, when I got engaged, my parents promised they would pay for my wedding. About 3 weeks ago, they told me they couldn't do it, all thanks to my sister, a 36-year-old woman who decided to get divorced from her husband around the same time. For context, my fiancé, a 34-year-old man, and I, a 34-year-old woman, have been together for the past 3 years. When he proposed, I was the happiest person on earth and told my family that day itself. We planned on paying for our wedding ourselves, and we wouldn't have had an issue with it. However, my parents were so happy when they found out about the engagement that they insisted on paying for everything. At first, I was a bit unsure, but they convinced me to agree to at least splitting the cost. That way, I wouldn't feel guilty about letting them cover the entire cost of the wedding. When my fiancé and I realized we could have a slightly bigger wedding than we initially planned, thanks to my parents' help, we planned accordingly. All of a sudden, they told me they wouldn't be able to finance the wedding because a lot of their money went into paying the divorce attorney who handled my sister's divorce. My parents, both retired from their jobs a couple of years ago, have been running a bookstore together since then. They're doing reasonably well. It's not like they're poor, but it's not like they're extremely rich either. I don't even understand why they felt the need to take over my sister's divorce and pay for her divorce lawyer out of their own pockets, especially when they were well aware of the consequences of hiring one of the best divorce attorneys in town. Of course, he was going to charge a fortune, and they knew it, but they still went ahead with him despite the promise they had made to me. Just a month before my sister filed for divorce, she had already been having a lot of trouble in her marriage by the time I got engaged, but nobody knew about it. However, a month after I announced my engagement, she and her husband got into another huge fight, and that's when she decided to end the marriage and move in with our parents. My parents told me they didn't have any other option but to help her out with the cost of the divorce and the attorney because she had quit her job about a year ago. Even though she and her husband had been together for almost 8 years and married for 6, the way he had been fighting with her lately made her think he might try to take everything away from her. They didn't even have a prenup, so she was scared of what would happen. That's why my parents decided to get the top divorce attorney to fight for her. It has proven to be quite expensive because the process is still ongoing, and they're still in the middle of negotiations to come to a settlement eventually. It's burning a hole in their pockets. When I asked them about the money they had promised for the wedding, they finally had to come clean and tell me they would not be able to finance it anymore. Ever since I got engaged and started planning my wedding, I had been counting on them. They had every opportunity to let me know they would be helping my sister with her divorce, so they wouldn't be able to contribute to my wedding. In the initial stages, I might not have cared about it, but they chose to tell me just a couple of weeks ago when I had already planned everything out, made payments in advance to certain vendors, and rented the venue with a partial payment. Most of the payments I made were non-refundable, so I had to go through with what I had planned all along. I had been thinking I would only have to clear the payments now, but the rest would be taken care of by my parents because that's what they had promised. They said we would split the cost of the wedding, and that's what I kept in mind while planning. Now, all of a sudden, they dropped a bomb on me and told me they wouldn't be able to do it. For the last couple of months, they had been stringing me along, telling me they would definitely take care of the expenses despite knowing they couldn't. I spoke to them about it 3 weeks ago when my fiancé and I visited them. My sister happened to be out at the time. We visited with the purpose of asking when they would send the money they promised because we would soon have to clear the rest of the payments. We didn't want to wait until the last minute or after the wedding because we would be too busy. We wanted to get everything out of the way since everything had been finalized, and we didn't want to change anything. That's when my parents confessed they didn't think it would be wise to spend more money, given they were already spending a fortune to ensure my sister didn't lose anything in the divorce. I started freaking out at them because, honestly, I was already stressed from planning the wedding, and this was the last thing I needed. They made it worse by saying it was my fault for planning a wedding bigger than we could afford. Just for the record, my fiancé and I initially decided to cover the cost ourselves and planned a small wedding. But my parents insisted they would cover at least half the expenses, so we started thinking a little bigger. Even now, we're not having a high-budget wedding. It's not like we can't afford it, it's just that my parents promised something, and I genuinely would have been fine with a smaller wedding if it had been just my fiancé and me funding it. Even now, we can afford it, but it threw off my plans. For my parents to have the audacity to tell me I didn't plan ahead and that this was my fault, even though they led me to believe they could cover half the expenses, was straight up gaslighting. They knew it wasn't my fault and that I planned a slightly bigger wedding because of their promise. But now they were trying to turn it around on me, and I wasn't going to have it. We got into a fight, and they started emotionally manipulating me, saying it was bad enough that I was getting married while my sister was going through something so awful. Apparently, my parents believe I shouldn't even get married right now because my sister is going through a divorce, and she needs the family to be there for her instead of me rubbing my life in her face by getting married. They tried to tell me to push the wedding to a later date so my fragile sister wouldn't be affected, as she couldn't handle it emotionally. It was ridiculously crazy that they acted like this was a sign to push back the wedding, as if I hadn't already planned everything and made payments. I was already furious at them, and this made everything 10 times worse. I ended up leaving with my fiancé, and it ended on a very bitter note. After that, I pretty much stopped speaking to my parents for a long time. I tried my best to make excuses for why they couldn't send the promised money so we could clear the rest of the payments. But after we found out the truth, my fiancé and I decided there was no point in speaking to them. To be clear, it wasn't about the money, it was about the promise they made and the fact that they tried to gaslight me into believing it was my fault for not planning ahead and that I was a bad person for getting married while my sister was getting divorced. I don't think that's a valid point because, from what I know, my sister had been having problems with her husband for months, and this didn't surprise anyone. As for my fiancé and me, everyone knew we were planning to get married. We only waited because his father's health had been poor, but once he got better, we got engaged immediately. Otherwise, we had plans to marry last year, and both our families knew about it. If my parents truly wanted to finance my wedding, they should have planned ahead and realized they couldn't pay for it. They should have told me instead of hiding it and pretending it was still happening. I feel my reason for being mad at them is valid, but they refuse to understand and pretend I'm the bad guy. For the past couple of weeks since our fight, we hadn't been speaking. A couple of days ago, my fiancé and I sent out the invitations. As I mentioned, we make enough money to afford the wedding ourselves, but we had expected a little help from my parents. After realizing that wasn't happening, we cleared all the payments ourselves and finalized the plan since the wedding was in just a couple of weeks. We were going on our honeymoon a few days after, so we didn't want to keep anything waiting. We sent out the invitations but decided to leave my family out because, after what happened, I didn't want them around me, it would just be unpleasant. I thought they should have seen it coming because, even after our fight, they hadn't reached out to apologize or even check on me. I could understand my sister not reaching out because she has her own issues and is living with my parents, so she's likely siding with them. I can forgive her or at least understand where she's coming from. But my parents' reaction was surprising because I expected them to reach out at least once, especially since they had been enthusiastic about planning the wedding. Yet, as soon as we hit a snag, they cut me off and didn't bother to apologize. I think it's because they don't believe they have anything to apologize for. If they had tried to talk to me, I might have attempted to sort things out. But when that didn't happen, I was very disappointed, which is why I didn't invite them to the wedding. My fiancé and his family also think we did the right thing by not inviting them because their behavior showed they didn't care. I didn't think they would care, but once they found out other family members received invitations and they didn't, my parents called to confront me. They sounded extremely upset, but I was transparent and told them their behavior had been hurtful. Even if I could look past their gaslighting and lying about financing the wedding, I couldn't ignore that they didn't try to make things right after our fallout. I did what I thought was right and didn't invite them because my wedding was supposed to be a happy day, and I didn't feel happy about my relationship with them. My parents defended themselves, saying I was being unreasonable and offering arguments they thought explained everything. Now I don't know what to think. First, they said they didn't initially tell me they couldn't afford the wedding because they were already paying for my sister's attorney. They didn't think it would be so expensive or that the divorce would take so long. It's been close to 5 months, and they still haven't reached a conclusion. The situation has gone to family court, and it might not be resolved for a couple more months. I don't know why it's taking so long to finalize the divorce, apart from the fact that they're fighting over alimony and who gets what from their jointly owned assets. It's all financial, but I can't imagine it taking this long to decide. Even if it is, I think my sister should pay for some of the costs since she quit her job only a year ago, and I know she has some savings. But my parents say she should save that for the future because she's looking for a job and will need money when she moves out. That's why they decided to help her, expecting me to understand. Second, they said they were embarrassed when they realized they couldn't pay for my wedding. They tried to scrape together some money but decided against it because they're not getting younger, and it wasn't the right time to splurge. They knew I could afford the wedding with my fiancé's support, so they didn't think it would get complicated and assumed I would forgive them. When I didn't, they were thrown off and got defensive, which is why they tried to gaslight me. They apologized for that but said they expected me to be the bigger person and understand their predicament. They said family is all you can count on, and if they couldn't count on me to understand, maybe I wasn't the person they thought they raised. That statement stuck with me, and I started thinking maybe I was too materialistic by not inviting them. It might have been a bit harsh. However, a part of me is still furious because they lied, gaslighted me, and didn't apologize until it was too late. I'm facing this dilemma and don't know which side of my mind to follow. So, Am I the asshole for not inviting my parents to my wedding after they told me they couldn't contribute to it? A couple of days have passed since I last spoke to my parents. Back then, I told them I needed time to think about what they said and reflect on everything before deciding. In these few days, the only decision I've reached is that thinking about this is just going to make my head hurt. I'm being serious, this situation isn't as black and white as I thought. Most of the comments I received shared a similar sentiment. When I spoke to my fiancé about it, he said I had to decide for myself whether I wanted to invite my family to the wedding, but he suggested taking time away from them to think with a clear, calm head. Some people asked why his parents hadn't offered to pay for the wedding. That's obvious, his dad falls sick often, and his health hasn't been well for years, so there's no telling when they'll need extra money. Personally, I don't think it's necessary to ask them to cover expenses either. In my original post, I mentioned several times that my fiancé and I were perfectly capable of funding the wedding ourselves, but we expected my parents' help because they said they would. Coming back to my parents, I reached out again and told them I still hadn't decided what I wanted to do. I said things aren't as easy or simple for me as they think, especially after the 3 weeks we didn't speak. That's what matters, what counts, and what's stopping me from fixing things with them. They didn't apologize, and when they did, it was too late. They didn't reply to that message, but it's fine, it gives me more time to think about what I want. Until then, I'm focusing on planning my wedding and work because I still have a lot to wrap up before my wedding and honeymoon. They made it easy by declining to attend, saying it's insulting and humiliating to be kept on standby. My sister sent me a message a couple of hours ago, saying she was sorry I was having trouble around my wedding but that I hadn't been sensitive enough to push it to a later date, despite her going through a horrible divorce. She felt it wasn't necessary for them to be sensitive to me either. In the first paragraph of her message, she ranted about how awful it was of me to constantly talk about my wedding around my parents and plan it in front of her, even though I knew she was going through the worst phase of her life. She said it was insensitive and that I was rubbing my happiness in her face to show off. She called me truly evil for doing that. To set the record straight, in the past 5 months, I tried my best to be sensitive to what my sister was going through. I hardly visited my parents to talk about the wedding because I knew she was living with them. Whenever my parents wanted to discuss the wedding, I asked them to stick to phone calls or visit me. The few times I visited with my fiancé, they turned the conversation to my wedding, even though I didn't want that. I guess they conveniently left that out while talking to my sister. It must have been easy to turn her against me because, although I didn't have anything against her, she's always been easily influenced. In the past few months, she's developed a tendency to dislike me. I tried to ignore it, but I guess she's picked a side for the worse. In the next paragraph, she said my parents were hurt that I was taking so long to decide whether I wanted them at my wedding. They believed it wasn't as complicated as I was making it seem and thought I was holding out to insult them again. My parents were making it seem like everything was about them, and I wasn't allowed to have feelings unless they were positive. She also said they believed my attempt to hurt and insult them over something so petty spoke more about my character than theirs. They claimed they had the decency to own up to their mistakes and apologize, but I hadn't even apologized to them, and now they didn't want one because it wouldn't mean anything. It was so dramatic, but they claimed their only mistake was raising a daughter who couldn't see beyond money. That line made me really mad because I couldn't believe they thought this was about money and not about them lying to me. Honestly, I couldn't care less about the money because my fiancé and I can afford the wedding we want with or without their help. My only complaint was that they should have told me when they realized they couldn't help, instead of making me seem like the bad person who's materialistic and greedy. Pretty much everyone I've spoken to, my fiancé, my bridesmaids, agrees it's not about the money, it's about the principle. If they can't understand that, they don't deserve to be at my wedding, let alone in my life. These last few weeks have been mentally and emotionally exhausting, and I'm kind of glad they declined. I only want to be surrounded by happiness and positivity right now, and that's not what I'm getting from them. So, I guess things worked out for the best. Below is a rewritten version of the provided text, expanded to add approximately 1,000 words while maintaining the original content and ensuring coherence with the existing narrative. The tone has been adjusted to be more reflective and emotionally nuanced, with added details to flesh out the context, emotions, and events, while keeping the core story intact. Yesterday, I celebrated the most significant day of my life, my wedding. It unfolded beautifully, without a single misstep, and I'm still basking in the glow of that perfect moment. In just 2 days, my husband and I will embark on our honeymoon, a much-anticipated escape to celebrate our new chapter together. It's strange to think I've been calling him my fiancé for so long. Months of habit have ingrained that word in my mind, but now, he's my husband. The shift in terminology feels monumental, a quiet reminder of the commitment we've made. I'll delve into that joy later, but first, I need to reflect on a troubling episode involving my family that unfolded in the days leading up to our wedding. I'm immensely grateful for the unwavering support of my husband and friends, who formed a protective circle around me, ensuring that the drama didn't tarnish my happiness. In my previous updates, I shared how my family chose not to attend our wedding. Their decision stemmed from my hesitation to immediately invite them after a series of painful events. I was grappling with whether I wanted them in my life at all, given their actions, and I felt I had every right to take my time deciding. The fallout with my parents and sister had been emotionally draining, marked by broken promises, accusations, and attempts to shift blame onto me. After they withdrew their financial support for the wedding, support they had enthusiastically promised, and then tried to guilt me into delaying my plans to accommodate my sister's divorce, I reached a breaking point. Their refusal to acknowledge their role in the hurt they caused only deepened the rift. When they declined to attend the wedding, citing my indecision as an insult, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. Dealing with their unpredictable behavior and emotional manipulation had been exhausting, and their choice to step back seemed to signal the end of the conflict. I thought I could finally focus on the joy of my upcoming marriage without the weight of their disapproval, but I was mistaken. Just days before the wedding, my family escalated the situation in a way I hadn't anticipated. They sent a mass email to nearly all my relatives and even a few of my husband's family members. The message was shockingly brief and vicious, a single line declaring that I was a gold digger and that my husband was on the verge of ruining his life by marrying me. The audacity of their words left me reeling. This wasn't just a private disagreement anymore, it was a deliberate attempt to smear my character and cast a shadow over one of the happiest moments of my life. The timing, mere days before the wedding, felt calculated, as if they wanted to disrupt my peace at the last possible moment. What struck me as particularly bizarre was that they had already made it clear they wouldn't attend, so why go to such lengths to attack me? It felt like a desperate bid for attention or control, a final attempt to pull me back into their orbit of drama. When I first learned about the email, my stomach dropped. I worried about how it might affect my relationships with extended family members or how it could taint the perception of our wedding. Some relatives reached out, confused and concerned, asking for clarification about the bizarre message. I could sense their discomfort, unsure whether to believe the accusation or dismiss it as nonsense. My husband, ever my rock, stepped in immediately. He calmly advised everyone to disregard the email, framing it as nothing more than spam, a petty act from my family that held no truth. My friends echoed his sentiments, rallying around me with reassurances and helping to diffuse the situation. Their support was a lifeline, reminding me that I didn't have to face this alone. Together, we crafted a unified response: ignore the email, focus on the celebration, and don't give my family the satisfaction of a reaction. To my relief, most people followed our lead, brushing off the message as the baseless outburst it was. Reflecting on this now, I'm struck by how much strength I drew from my chosen family, my husband and my closest friends. Their unwavering support allowed me to let go of the hurt and refocus on what truly mattered: the love and commitment we were about to celebrate. The email could have derailed my emotions, casting a dark cloud over the wedding preparations, but instead, it became a fleeting annoyance, quickly overshadowed by the joy of the moment. I refused to let my family's actions define my day. I've spent too long trying to navigate their expectations, their manipulations, and their refusal to take accountability. This time, I chose myself and the life I'm building with my husband. The wedding itself was everything I'd hoped for and more. As I walked down the aisle, surrounded by the smiling faces of those who genuinely love and support us, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The absence of my parents and sister, while bittersweet, didn't diminish the moment. If anything, it clarified what I value most: authenticity, love, and mutual respect. My husband's family welcomed me with open arms, and our friends filled the day with laughter and warmth. Every detail, the vows we exchanged, the music that filled the air, the shared glances between us, felt like a celebration of not just our love but also our resilience. We've built something beautiful together, and no amount of external drama could take that away. Looking back, I realize how much this ordeal has taught me about boundaries and self-worth. For so long, I tried to make excuses for my family's behavior, hoping they would see the hurt they caused and make amends. But their actions, lying about the wedding funds, gaslighting me into feeling guilty, and now this malicious email, showed me that their priorities lie elsewhere. My sister's divorce, while undoubtedly painful for her, became an excuse for my parents to sideline my happiness. Their insistence that I should delay my wedding to spare her feelings felt like a demand to put my life on hold for someone else's struggles. I empathize with my sister's challenges, but I refuse to believe that my joy should be sacrificed to accommodate her pain. Life doesn't work that way. Happiness isn't a zero-sum game. The email incident, in particular, revealed the depths of their resentment. I can't help but wonder what drove them to such an extreme act. Were they hoping to provoke a reaction, to force me to reach out and plead for reconciliation? Or was it simply spite, a way to punish me for standing my ground? Either way, it backfired. Instead of pulling me back into their drama, it solidified my resolve to move forward without them. I've spent too much energy trying to mend a relationship that they've repeatedly damaged. Their refusal to apologize sincerely, or at all, until it was too late, speaks volumes about their unwillingness to take responsibility. The accusation that I'm materialistic, that this was all about money, stings because it's so far from the truth. It was never about the funds, it was about the trust they broke and the promises they failed to keep. As I prepare for our honeymoon, I'm filled with a sense of gratitude and clarity. My husband is my partner, my confidant, and my best friend. Together, we've weathered this storm, and I know we can face anything life throws our way. Our honeymoon will be a celebration of not just our marriage but also our shared strength. I'm excited to step into this new phase of life with him, free from the weight of my family's expectations. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood but by those who show up, who love you unconditionally, and who celebrate your victories as their own. My husband and our friends have proven to be that family, and I'm content knowing they're the ones I'll carry forward with me. In the end, I'm at peace with how everything unfolded. The wedding was a testament to the life we're building, and the drama with my family only highlighted the importance of surrounding ourselves with positivity. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents and sister. Maybe one day, with time and genuine effort, we can find a way to heal. But for now, I'm choosing to focus on the present, on the love that surrounds me, and on the adventure that awaits us. I'm married now, and my husband is the family I choose, the one I want by my side as we write the next chapter of our story.